The opinions, views, and conclusions expressed in this show are those of the show host and co-host and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of KPFV FM or its affiliates.
KPFV LP 98.1 FM presents Changing the Planet One Mind at a Time every Thursday, 1 p.m. with your host, Gail Gaia.
Good afternoon. This is Gail of Gaia, and we have an exciting afternoon. We're going to talk with Dr. Stephanie Seneff, and she is an expert from MIT and is not afraid to speak her mind, and the information that she has found out is absolutely phenomenal, and we hope to share that with you. Good afternoon, Stephanie. Are you on the line?
I am.
Well, hi. I'm so happy to have you on. I'm excited to have you on. And I'd also like to introduce you to Dr. Glenn. He's on the line with us. He's my co-host when he's able to get here. Yeah. And today is one of those days, so we're very excited to be able to talk with you. I love your work, and I'm so happy that you're as vocal as you are about the things that you find out, and you never cease to amaze me. So,
and I'd like to. So, hello, Stephanie. I'll call you Dr. Seneff at least once. I know you like to be more informal, yes, and I'm Glenn. So, I'd like to start this off with, I've had innumerable celebrities under my hands. I'm a chiropractor, and it doesn't do anything for me. They're just people, as far as I'm concerned. But having you on the other end of this conversation, it excites me to no end, much more than any of these big superstars that I've actually adjusted. So
she's a superstar in science.
Yeah, which really is. Whoa! I just hope that I can maintain my composure.
Okay, sounds great. We'll have a fun time.
All right, well, let's get started then. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself, because I don't know that my listening audience is aware of your background, and I think your background's important. I love the part about the computer, too, because you are able to analyze data like it's going out of style.
Thanks. So I have my background is all about MIT. I went there as an undergraduate many years ago, got a bachelor's degree in biology. Switched over to computer science and electrical engineering for my MSE and Ph.D. degrees, all from MIT. And after I graduated, I worked for MIT, so I basically never left MIT. I actually have 4 sons, and they all went to MIT as well.
Oh, wow.
We're an MIT family. Yeah, I love the place. And MIT has been very, very good to me, and especially lately, because I've gotten into some controversial areas, and many schools would probably...
Well, whenever you tell the truth, it gets to be controversial.
It gets dicey. So you are still working. I was curious as if you had retired or not.
I'm still working as a senior research scientist. That's the highest level on the research staff. So I'm not officially a professor. I'm a researcher, but I've been at MIT all my life, and as a senior research scientist. So it's like a full professor on the research track, and. Most of my career, I worked on developing, writing code, actually, to develop systems on the computer that would allow the computer to engage in natural conversation in order to provide information to people using natural language-based interfaces. So sort of precursors to Siri, if you know Siri, and that sort of, or the Echo, Amazon's Echo. We were doing that work way back when. So,
wow.
That was most of my career, and. But it was about 10 years ago that I sort of drifted over into biology, and pretty quickly I sort of couldn't look back. I just basically got so engaged with the situation of toxic chemicals in the environment and all the diseases that we're suffering from lately that I just got completely caught up in that and had to kind of drop everything else and just work on that.
Glad that you did.
Me too. Hey, you know what, I'll tell you something, Stephanie, that's kind of interesting, is that you said that you had a degree, you did your bachelor's in biology and you did a minor in nutrition. Is that correct?
That's right. Yes,
well,
I did do a
mine is just absolutely reversed of that. I started out, and when I went to the University of Wisconsin-Stout, and so I started out with a biology minor because I just loved biology, and I didn't like textiles and some of the other stuff. And then I moved into the nutrition field, so it's kind of just reversed, yeah. And then I got my master's in nutrition too. Yeah.
So you're more into nutrition officially, and I definitely have gotten extremely interested in nutrition. And I believe now that nutrition is really the most important thing in health, and I'm sure you agree.
Yes. Oh, thank you. It's nice to have someone like you back that up and say that, because I've been saying it for a long time, and I've been poo-pooed, and I swear the medical profession has been the bane of my career.
Yeah. And they're amazing that they don't ever even mention anything about food. They seem to think food is irrelevant. It doesn't matter what you eat.
It's just all chemicals. It's just chemicals, and we'll just kind of pile them up. We'll make them in the lab, and then we'll give them to you. You'll be just fine. It's just chemicals.
And they used to laugh at detox, too. You talked about detox. They just laugh at you, and they tell patients that, that's stupid.
I know. It's so incredible where we are right now. It's surreal, actually. I feel like it's kind of a living nightmare.
Yes, it's so proliferative. All these poisons coming from everywhere, and it's like, where do you start? I'm wondering, where do we start today with all this? It's so huge. We need a week.
I know. And you have discovered so many things about so many of the metabolic pathways that are grossly interfered with glyphosate.
It is incredible, absolutely incredible. It's such an amazing molecule. I mean, I've enjoyed studying it because it's so fascinating, and it's terrifying, absolutely terrifying. And right now I believe that essentially everybody in this country is accumulating glyphosate in their tissues, and the ones who are eating more, glyphosate-riddled food are accumulating it faster. And we're all ticking time bombs, and something's going to go off, and some organ's going to get destroyed. Once you get into a cycle of inflammation in an organ, you draw in glyphosate because it's hanging out in the bone marrow, and the immune cells and the cells that are going to go in and help you fight off, even to repair damage if you have an injury. They're going to bring glyphosate in on their backs, and they're going to poison that space, and they're going to cause additional damage. So it almost prevents you from repairing.
Yeah, the idea that it chelates all of the minerals, and the minerals are so important in so many of the enzymatic reactions involved in metabolism, and then the interference with the aromatic amines and how that goes to all the hormones and all the neurotransmitters and the folate. And you know what? I learned something from one of your presentations because I didn't realize it, and it's not something that they frequently teach you, and that was about folic acid is actually the synthetic version of folate, and folate is what we really need. And if you don't have the enzymes necessary to make the conversion, you're in trouble.
And folate also comes out of the shikimate pathway, the pathway that glyphosate disrupts. So we have a deficiency in folate, which ordinarily would be supplied by our gut microbes, but because they're being poisoned by glyphosate, they can't supply enough folate for us, and so we do have a deficiency. And so the solution the government came up with is to add folic acid fortification to flour-based products like bread. And that is a huge mistake because the folic acid is a very bad form of folate.
Wow. And you know what else they did to bread? They not only they did that with the folic acid, but they also took out the iodine and put in bromine, which is a flame retardant.
Yes. I know, that's an interesting one too. I've jumped into that rabbit hole as well, but I haven't pursued it deep enough to,
We're on a massive poisoning trip here, right?
We are. It is incredible how they manage to sort of guess everything wrong. It almost seems intentional. It's just like they can't get anything right,
It does, and then what is good, what is good, then they go and ruin it by GMO in it.
I know.
Yeah, so even
and they also, of course, attack anybody who's actually got decent solutions, like chiropractors.
Yeah, and something I've told people forever, that, even over 30 years ago when I began my career, was, they'd ask, well, what should I eat, Doc? And I'm like, look, you can spend the next month in the bookstore and get half of one shelf read. You still got 4 more aisles to go. But here's a concept. Here's a concept to take with you. Eat your food as close to the way God created it as possible. Now, even these days, you're going to look at it and it looks like the real food, but it's contaminated so badly. And that's a question that before we get into the deep stuff too that we were discussing before the show, it's like, is there truly any organic food anywhere?
Yeah, I know. It's discouraging, isn't it? I don't know if you know the work of Tony Mitra in Canada. He's an activist. I love him. He's so intense and
What's
so
his name
dedicated.
again?
Tony Mitra. He's Indian descent. M-I-T-R-A. Great guy. And he has been harassing the Canadian government for many years to test for glyphosate. So it's really amazing that glyphosate is by far the most used herbicide on the planet. And the U.S. uses by far much more than any other country, basically. I mean, Canada's a close second. And so these two countries, they have the highest level of glyphosate in their food compared to all the other countries that Canada looked at. So what happened was Tony got Canada to do a whole bunch of testing. The U.S. has done almost no testing for glyphosate contamination in food. Their attitude is the stuff is safe, we don't care, you know.
I'm afraid our politicians are owned by Monsanto.
Whoever has the money.
Not to mention the revolving door between the government positions and the Monsanto Corporation positions. Yep. Now, there was another thing that I heard USDA had hidden like 1,200 documents nearly on the safety of the GMOs and so on. But anyway, I guess we should go back to the organic food thing.
Because actually, so what was interesting was that Tony found that there were incredibly high levels of glyphosate in chickpeas and lentils. He cared because he's Indian and he eats a lot of those things. Chickpeas and lentils and beans, garbanzo beans, incredibly high levels if they came from the U.S. or Canada. And even the organics from the U.S. and Canada had high levels. They were about half, but the levels were incredibly high. And even the non-organics from other countries like Europe or Mexico had much lower levels of glyphosate than the organics from Canada and the U.S. He's really puzzled by that, and he's been trying to get to the bottom of it. I don't think he's figured it out yet, but it's really interesting.
Well, they don't use the GMO or the Roundup as much in Europe, do they?
True, I know, absolutely. I mean, and what's surprising is Mexico, because he found, so Canada was measuring for foods that were in Canada, so these were imports from Mexico, so that may be different from what you'd get if you went to Mexico. Canadian imports from Mexico, so that's kind of an interesting filter. But they found consistently, for all the foods that they measured, much, much less glyphosate in the Mexican food compared to the U.S. or Canada. So it's kind of an interesting tip. If you see tomatoes from Mexico, buy them.
Well, that's funny that you say that, because I've been doing that. If I buy tomatoes, I was looking if it's from Italy or if it's from Europe. I'm more inclined to buy it. I wasn't aware of the Mexico. I wasn't sure if it was safe, but I try not to buy Canadian or American, and that sounds terrible. But until we go back to organic farming, I know too much about the toxicity. I know too much about the enzyme disruptions and all that stuff. But now we get told, or I run into people saying, well, organic's not really organic. So
right. Well, there's a point to that, because if an organic farm is sitting in the middle of a vast field of GMO Roundup Ready corn, I mean, how is it going to keep? You don't have any fences at the border. So when the glyphosate's being sprayed, the wind is going to blow it over your crop. I mean, you can't avoid it. It's in the rain. There was a study, I think, in Kentucky that had found something like, I don't know, maybe 76% of the rain samples had glyphosate in them. I mean, you just can't avoid it in this country. So you're kind of stuck. But the organics typically have less, and sometimes a lot less. So of course I buy certified organic always when I shop. And luckily you can get it. I mean, it's really good. It's been growing exponentially, really.
I know. I'm so happy to see that. I'm so happy to see that. I keep telling people, if you keep buying it, the price is going to go down.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really super that people are demanding organic. I think that's going to be key to our salvation. If just the individual grassroots effort of refusing to buy the food. If we don't buy it, they won't make it.
Right.
You always got to hit them in the pocketbook.
Yeah, I think a big thing too is to flip that food, that sad diet upside down. And my advice to most people is, look, just stop eating grains in any form whatsoever for at least the next year, because they're so heavily contaminated with the glyphosate. Not to mention the whole leptin resistance you get and all that. It's like, look, just stop eating that stuff.
The folic acid fortification, and the iron fortification is probably not good either.
Now, what do you think about with the Mexican food? So they still using DDT down there? Have you followed DDT at all?
I don't know. Have you heard that they are?
I've heard that, yeah, it's not illegal down there, so they're probably using DDT. But I don't know that as fact. It's all rumor.
Yeah, that's definitely nasty stuff. I mean, I think glyphosate's right up there with DDT.
Oh yeah,
wow.
I'm just appalled. The more I find out about it, and Dr. Samsel has done some really good. The two of you have done some great work together. And I remember I didn't get to listen to one of the shows that you did. That you have pretty much been able to prove that it causes cancer. Is that true? I mean, cancer is just small potatoes compared to everything else that it does, too, anyway.
I know. I mean, they obsess on the cancer, but there's so much else. Of course, I'm really worried about the autism. I really think glyphosate is the reason.
That is frightening.
Yeah, it's in the vaccines, too.
It just shocks me that the U.S. government doesn't seem to think there's a problem, with autism. I mean, it's going to be devastating when this generation grows up. And we're going to have all these disabled adults on top of a new crop of disabled children in larger numbers. I mean, I cannot picture what the future is going to look like. It's so terrifying.
It has to change, and it needs to change quickly. And that's why
it does. And the thing is, because it's accumulating, we're not going to be able to just stop and reverse right away. It's going to take a long time to get it out of our system.
Right.
Speaking
Even
of which,
if we were to just stop today and just completely ban glyphosate starting today, we'd still have a long recovery period.
Right. That's a line of questioning that we both wanted to go into with you. Is now, most people, for me at least personally, I love the deep dive you do because it makes me go do deeper research. But for the average listener here, what can they do? Let's give us some tools that the average person can start using to, one, get away from it, and two, start detoxing from it.
Yeah, well, so one thing wonderful, if you've got any kind of yard with some healthy soil, you can grow your own food and grow it organically. I think that's a wonderful thing to do. That really gives you sort of food security, to have your own. For people who can do that, I think it's wonderful.
I say that, yeah. It is.
And even in the city, some people are doing some interesting rooftop, so it's really neat to think about growing your own food if you can.
And community gardens and things of that nature.
Yes, exactly. That's just really great. I mean, that was one of the things that was popular during the war, this victory garden. And we need, I think, a return of that concept, because we're kind of in a war right now. We need victory gardens so that we have food security.
That's funny. Now, we're kind of in a war. You mean a war against Monsanto and their like?
Yes,
or,
Exactly.
That was kind of an open statement that could have meant a lot, and it did to me.
Yes.
Yes. Well, they have our health under siege. There's no doubt about that.
Right. Now, there are some interesting things you can do with diet in addition to, of course, eating organic. One thing is bone broth. You probably know about that, but my husband's a great cook, and he cooks a pot of soup pretty much every weekend, and then we drink soup. We have soup as dinner every night, pretty much. Gotcha. And he gets the organic, grass-fed beef, the big bones from the.
And that would be critical that it would be organic as well, wouldn't it? Because didn't you say that
it's in the bone marrow?
It accumulates. That's the one I'm trying to say. That's not coming out of my mouth. It accumulates in the bone marrow.
Right, because if you do the bone broth from the CAFO beef, the beef, the cows that are fed all that GMO Roundup Ready feed, the glyphosate goes into the bone marrow. So you're going to get I would expect you to get a heavy dose of glyphosate. If you use the wrong bone. So it's really crucial with the bone broth to use healthy bones for your broth.
So that probably wouldn't be any cattle from the United States, would it?
I don't. Probably so.
Well, I better watch out. The Cattlemen's Association will be after me.
It is available. Even a gelatin that I use is all organic grass-fed. It wasn't easy to find, but that's what I found. Now, I'll get it to you. Okay. Now, the bone broth in conjunction with coconut oil and your correcting your microbiome, your gut microbiome, and all that.
Yeah, the probiotic food.
Yeah, the probiotic. It's essential to healing of the brush border, the leaky gut thing. And I know that glyphosate contributes to that leaky gut as well, correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. And in fact, what I'm discovering, because I'm seeing that glyphosate is preferentially taken up by two particular kinds of cells. Ones that multiply a lot, that proliferate,
oh, lovely.
and ones that secrete proteins. So, for example, in the pancreas, you have the cells that secrete the enzymes, the digestive enzymes.
Mm-hmm.
And Anthony actually ordered porcine trypsin from a lab, and he tested it, and it was highly contaminated with glyphosate.
Ugh.
Porcine trypsin. So this is trypsin from pork, right? Of course, the pigs are fed all kinds of glyphosate in their feed. And the trypsin is interesting because it has a lot of glycine residues that are absolutely essential for it to function. And the big deal thing that Anthony and I are working on lately, which is a little bit of tricky science, but it has to do with the glycine in the proteins getting swapped out for glyphosate, which is something we believe is happening.
Because it's an analog, correct?
Exactly. Glyphosate is a glycine molecule, but it has some extra stuff stuck onto the nitrogen. It's actually a very simple molecule. It's remarkably toxic considering how simple it is, but it is a glycine. It's an amino acid. And so what we think is happening is that the machinery that uses the DNA code to assemble a protein makes a mistake. It's looking for glycine, and it grabs glyphosate by mistake because it looks like glycine. This is what we think is happening, and we are finding so much support for this concept. Really unbelievable how everything makes sense as to why glyphosate would be causing all these diseases that it's causing, if this is true. So we have not been able to prove it, and a lot of people are saying, no, it's not possible. We're getting a lot of pushback. But I'm going to stick with this until we succeed in proving to the skeptics that this is happening, because I fully believe it.
I believe it too, and just from what I've read and what I've seen of your work, I'm on board 100%. It's just you always get pushback when you don't go along to get along.
Yeah.
Right, I know, and it's interesting how I think almost what Monsanto has worked at making sure that chemists believe that it can't happen so that they won't look, because I suspect the Monsanto executives know this is happening, and they're trying very hard to suppress it. Their own work really revealed it, and Anthony has gotten a hold of a whole bunch of papers that, well, these are secret documents that the EPA finally gave to Anthony after he bugged them for a long time. Huge stacks of materials that you cannot search, so it's very tedious to study it. But he has found papers that, research unpublished secret documents that Monsanto produced that showed that that glyphosate was showing up in the muscles. So the muscles have lots of proteins, and it was showing up as a radio label. They basically radio labeled the glyphosate so they could track it, and they found it in the muscles, but they didn't detect it if they looked for glyphosate. And this is the tricky thing, is that when glyphosate goes into the proteins, you don't see it using the normal detection method, so it can hide in the protein.
They've created a virus.
Yeah, it's like you have to break down the protein because it's stuck in the protein chain, and so it doesn't produce the proper signal for glyphosate, which is really hideous, because then they can say, oh, no, it doesn't have any glyphosate in it, So you have to subject it to proteolysis before you free up that glyphosate molecule, and actually it causes the protein to resist proteolysis, which is why you get a lot of protein debris. I've got a bunch of noise in the background. Can you hear it? Somebody's
sounds like a jet.
Yeah,
it sounds like a jet.
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
I was like, are you on your way to Kauai? I hate you.
So the glyphosate goes into the protein, and then you can't break the protein down, and the protein also then misfolds, and so you get all these issues like the prions. You're getting misfolded proteins that are causing nasty autoimmune disease because of the glyphosate contamination in the protein. This is what we think, and this is why we think we can explain the alarming increase in things like not just autism, but Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's disease, multiple sclerosis, ALS, all of these nasty neurological diseases. We believe, Anthony and I, that these are being caused, the increase is being caused by glyphosate.
And then I'm sure it has a synergistic effect with the fluoride in the water, the aluminum in the air.
The chemtrails, the aluminum, the chemtrails and all that. That's a subject that you touch on. You get into the chemtrails too, don't you? Studying that?
Yeah, I always kind of hesitate because I know that there's a lot of
look out, they'll be jumping on you.
There's some more pushback. There's some more pushback there.
Duck, the darts will be coming. But anyway, there was another topic that I see people all the time walking around with oxygen. Okay, the COPD people. Now, could you address that issue as it relates to glyphosate also?
Would you say oxygen?
No.
COPD.
COPD.
Yeah.
Oh, COPD.
Yeah.
chronic obstructive pulmonary disease.
Exactly,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, well, I totally think it's connected to not only glyphosate, but also some of the other pesticides that they're using, like even maybe the fungicides. I mean, I suspect it's connected to that as well. But I think the glyphosate is actually a major contributor to COPD. I suspect Anthony and I want to do a paper on that. Both of us have relatives who are suffering from COPD, so we're both interested in that. And we've collected some materials, but we haven't yet assembled a paper on that one yet because it seems kind of challenging to explain. But I do think that glyphosate is causing fibrosis in general, not just in the lungs. COPD has a feature of it is lung fibrosis, but there's also other diseases that have fibrosis, such as in the kidney, actually, the disease that the agricultural workers are suffering from in Central America, the people who are the sugarcane workers. I don't know if you've heard about this. There's a strange kidney disease that's not associated with diabetes and high blood pressure. It's
was
not
that in Sri Lanka? Was that in Sri
Lanka? Yes, in Sri Lanka, and also in
yeah.
Central America. Sri Lanka has done a good job of fingering glyphosate as being the cause of this disease.
Yes.
And they're in Central America, they're not so sure. They're sort of thinking more it's dehydration, but it's dehydration which glyphosate makes much worse. I mean, this is what glyphosate does. Sort of everything else that happens to you gets much worse when you've got glyphosate in the picture, because the mechanisms that will heal break down. And so it just makes it much worse. But the fibrosis, so there's a fibrosis of the kidney tubules that's associated with this disease.
Is that related to the glycine, you think, being substituted, or the glyphosate?
I do, because in fact what I think is happening is that the collagen, so collagen has huge amounts of glycine in it, and collagen is the most common protein in the body. Like 25% of the proteins in the body are collagen molecules.
Wow.
And that's the glue, it's like in your skin, it's in your bones, it's in your joints, and it's in your organs. And when you get inflammation, it's interesting, because when an organ gets inflamed, which happens to these kidneys in part because of metal toxicity, so things like arsenic, and the guys in Sri Lanka wrote about that. Iron and arsenic can cause inflammation. Inflammation causes the organ to increase its synthesis of collagen and also the breakdown of collagen. So it sort of increases the turnover of collagen under inflammatory conditions. Mm-hmm. And so what's happening is it's making all this collagen that it can't break down because the collagen's screwed up, So it gets all this kind of messed up collagen with the glyphosate in it. Collagen has a beautiful triple helix crystal structure that depends upon all those glycine molecules that are in it. Collagen has a lot of glycine. Like 25% of the protein is glycine. So when you start mixing in glyphosate molecules in there...
So we're looking at issues with arthritis then, too, right?
Absolutely, and all the opioid drug epidemic that we're hearing about these days, it's in the news even, right? People are overdosing on opioid drugs in record numbers because these are painkillers. Mm-hmm. And I think that so many people are in agony with back pain and shoulder pain and knee pain and foot pain. I mean, all these different joint pains that people are suffering from, hip replacement therapy, all of these things. There's disruption of the joints because the joints critically depend upon the collagen, which provides the tensile strength, and it holds the water. I mean, it does so many important things to make the joint healthy. And those things get all messed up when it's contaminated with glyphosate. This is what we think, Anthony and I. Mm-hmm. Anthony actually found glyphosate, a significant amount of glyphosate in the hooves of horses that were suffering from founder. So founder
really?
Is like, yes.
That's fascinating. I had a horse that had that one time. That's why I go, wow, that's interesting.
Well, it seems to me, just listening to all this, that of course we're attacked on many fronts with this glyphosate, but if someone was to focus on healing the brush border, that would go a long way to reduce the serum inflammation, which then that's really is the research. I've been doing a lot of deep stuff too and going in many directions, but I'm really dropping into the really root cause is the brush border, and then the cytokine reaction from the infusion of all these foreign matters into the blood, and then everything else comes apart. Then we add that to glyphosate everywhere else in the body, and it just magnifies it. No wonder things are accelerating exponentially.
Absolutely, and of course I think that glyphosate attacks the gut lining, and particularly those enterocytes that are in the midgut. It's sort of all connected to celiac disease, which of course is also caused by glyphosate. The epidemic in celiac is caused by glyphosate contamination in the wheat. But again, those cells that are in those villi, they multiply tremendously. They keep on.
Yeah,
new ones come up and they get damaged, and new ones come up. They're constantly those villi. These really complicated shapes with all these, hair-like structures. That part of the gut has huge surface area, and those cells are constantly renewed. So they keep on multiplying to produce new ones. But cells that multiply take up glyphosate. And they've got glyphosate in the gut, which is the first place where it lands. So they're just taking up that glyphosate and getting sick.
So it seems like
you get it completely stripped down.
First order for anyone with any chronic disease, right off the top, should go on to organic food.
Organic and eradicate all grain consumption.
And stop and do whatever you can for the detox process of glyphosate. Now, you talked one time about humic and fulvic acid being helpful. I know Epigenetics Labs makes a multivitamin supplement that has fulvic, the fermented stuff in it, and the fulvic and humic acid, and I highly recommend it.
That sounds like a great resource.
It does. It's Epigenetic Labs. They are out of it right now. I just tried to.
It's such a good hit. Well, that's good, right?
I just ran out of it a couple of weeks ago, and I've been meaning to order it, and then I went to look to try to order it earlier today, and I'm going, oh no, they're out of it. We're waiting for a new. But you got to get on the list, so I want to look that one up.
Yeah, that's really amazing.
But I was impressed.
Fulvic acid, the humic.
Yeah, both of them. Both of them.
And of course, also the apple cider vinegar and sauerkraut, which are really interesting because of Acetobacter, which is one of the few microbes that can metabolize glyphosate. So Acetobacter can actually clear the glyphosate from the gut.
That is something that I started doing a few years ago, and I really do think that it improved my health substantially, and that is that apple cider vinegar. I know somebody went, apple cider vinegar, what do you do? At first I thought, well, how in the heck am I going to, incorporate?
With the mother, though. You got to have the mother.
Oh, yeah, very important. The organic kind. So what you do
Bragg's organic, and we use that, we make a salad every night. Most nights we have a salad, and we just put that organic vinegar on it.
Well, this is what I did. I would take like a 32-ounce thing of water, and I'd add about 1 or 2 tablespoons of the apple cider vinegar. Then I would use the now stevia, which would slightly sweeten it, and I would just drink on that all day. And
that's neat, yeah.
I really felt like it. You can even throw in a little bit of Ceylon cinnamon in there, and it just makes it taste like apple pie.
The Chinese have they're very into vinegar, and they will serve at a banquet. They will serve all these different vinegars for you to taste, the way you would have wine. Americans think it's like, oh my God, the wine is spoiled. I can't tell them, but actually it is vinegar, and they're proud of it. Different vinegars.
And it has an alkalizing effect, and most people wouldn't believe that because you think, well, it's acid. How's it going to be alkalizing? And it is, and that's another important aspect.
Question on water. I'm also familiar with Gerald Pollack's work, and I would guess that the extra electrons through an ionization process, or Pollack hasn't figured out how to mass produce easy water. That is probably critical in the detox and neutralization of this glyphosate as well. What's your opinion on that?
Absolutely. Well, in fact, I think glyphosate, I've written a lot about this, glyphosate disrupts the body's ability to maintain structured water. It's really interesting to me that in the body, most of the water in the body is structured in the tissues, but the blood is a big exception because the blood has to flow, so it has to stay liquid. And the body has come up with really clever devices to maintain structured water along the edge of the capillary, but still allow the blood to flow in the middle. So there's a boundary between the structured water and the chaotic water that's in the middle part of the capillary. And that requires some really sophisticated biology and chemistry and physics to pull that off. And the body has wonderful mechanisms to do it, but glyphosate is a train wreck for it in so many different dimensions. And I've talked a lot about that in the past, that your body should be able to make its own structured water and maintain it.
Very difficult when we're bombarded by so much positive ionization out there. That's very difficult. So these ion machines, these alkalizing ion machines and all that water is very beneficial. Problem with that is you can't take it with you. Are you aware that there is a water on the market that actually has a stabilized structure, hexagonally structured ionized water?
Wow. How did they keep it from being Jell-O?
Well, the guy's not talking. I actually know the inventor, and he stumbled into it. And it's countrywide, but it's not, it's not owned by Nestle. So,
Thank God.
Yeah, so
I
so
would be
it's
very
not,
suspicious if it was.
Yeah, you might not see it in your area, but I'll plug it. It's called Real Water, REAL Water, and you can search that up and look at it on the internet. And I'd love your opinion on that. So it's all the research I've done. I've done a deep dive on water too, and that water appears to meet all the criteria of Gerald Pollack's Easy Water, and it's really exciting. So that is essential as well, as getting those extra electrons in there to help scavenge all this nonsense.
There's some excitement about hydrogen as well lately. Some people are very excited about hydrogen.
Yes.
Or hydroxyl ions rather than
H2 hydrogen, which is really fascinating. Yeah, I am puzzled actually.
Right, because that's a positive charge.
H2 is just a neutral.
H2. Okay.
It should be very inert. Yeah, H plus is a very different animal. That's the protons, and protons are really important for electricity. They're really crucial in the body for electricity. But H2 is supposed to be inert. It's very difficult to break those two H's apart. Although I wonder if the structured water can do it. I wouldn't be surprised. We don't really know the physics of water well enough, for sure. There's
Isn't that
a lot
amazing?
of mystery. A lot of mystery in how water works. And so I think we could be making assumptions. I think chemists could be making false assumptions about things that they think can't happen.
Right.
Like the glyphosate substituting for the glycine. But I think it's mysterious as to why, to me, as to why H2 would be a good therapy. It's mysterious. I can't. I don't have a good reason for it yet. I'm digging around to try to see if I can find something that makes sense. But
well, isn't the structured water that you have, or that you're talking about, Dr. Glenn? Isn't that H3O2?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
yes,
that's what.
right.
So that
That's
could
the
have
hexagonally
real
structured.
beneficial effects because it's already got an extra hydrogen, so to speak.
Right. Well, it's interesting according to Jerry Pollack's work, when you structure the water into this hexagonal structure, you come up short one proton, and so you push you free up protons and push them out. Proton is H plus, so H2 is 2 protons plus 2 electrons. And what you want to do with the H2 is you want to separate the protons from electrons, because once you can separate them, you get a battery and you get mobility, you get electrical energy. And so I believe that the structured water is the electrical supply line for the cells.
And we're body electric too, aren't we?
Right.
I mean,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Electricity
Bob
is
Becker's
so important
work
for our
there.
body, and I think that we are in a major deficiency. You could say that our electrical supply lines are broken today because of the
glyphosate.
Yeah,
particularly glyphosate, and probably other ones as well. I mean, the fluoride is probably messing things up. A lot of things are probably messing up the electrical circuitry of the body. And, and that's also why you become very sensitive to electromagnetic fields, with the cell towers and things like that.
Oh, that's another whole area. I mean, we're getting hit from so many areas. It's amazing. We're still walking.
It's so interesting to think about something like the cell towers and the whole, the booming industry of technology and computers and all of that and the internet. I mean, we've taken for granted the need for all this electrical signaling that's allowing us to communicate, and the idea of taking that away is horrifying, right, to people. And if you knew that it was, like, for example, when you talk on the cell phone, if you knew it was going to cause brain cancer, would you do it?
Mm-hmm.
And
you certainly shouldn't be holding your phone up to your head. That's for sure.
But people
I
do it
know.
anyway. Well, as humans, we're so nearsighted. It's not. It didn't cause it today. I'm fine. It didn't put me into a convulsion.
That's it, exactly.
What about 10 years from now, 20 years from now? Oh, I might not even be alive then. We're very, very short-sighted as humans.
We're very able to ignore that kind of evidence. It's the same thing. I think it's a lot of analogies with the electrical fields, and the glyphosate, because the effects are slow and insidious,
Mm-hmm.
And you don't necessarily believe it, even though you read a paper that says, well, there's this huge percentage increase, in brain cancer for these people who do this thing. you still don't believe it in many cases. You're like, well, I'm not going to give up myself. I mean, people are like that, right?
Right.
It's not going to happen to me. I mean, people always have some excuse for why they think this is irrelevant to them. And when we collectively do that, then we just poison everybody, you know?
Yeah. But I like my donuts. Yeah, but donuts cost...
Exactly.
Exactly. Oh. Well, you know what? Here's an area that I think I'd like to address a couple areas briefly in the relationship to glyphosate, because there's such a big problem. People have insomnia like it's going out of style. And
yes.
I know basically what's going on, but why don't you explain that with the neurotransmitter problems in glyphosate?
Right. I mean, glyphosate, of course, disrupts the shikimate pathway, which produces the aromatic amino acids. And the aromatic amino acids are precursors to the neurotransmitters. So serotonin, melatonin, melanin, the skin tanning agent, dopamine, adrenaline, all of those things come from that shikimate pathway, which is in the microbes in our gut. So Monsanto says it doesn't matter that it affects this pathway because our cells don't have it. That's their great excuse for why it doesn't hurt us. But we depend on those microbes to supply those aromatics, which are going to then, in turn, be the precursors to our neurotransmitters. So we end up with deficiencies in all of those things if we're chronically exposed to glyphosate. And I've written a paper about the pineal gland. Of course, the pineal gland produces melatonin. Melatonin comes right out of that shikimate pathway. And melatonin is essential for good sleep. You know, a lot of people are taking melatonin in order to have a good night's sleep. And so with the melatonin deficiency alone, you would expect to have a sleep disorder. Mm-hmm. But there's also an issue with the pineal gland. Glyphosate, so the paper that I wrote proposes that glyphosate binds to aluminum and carries it to the pineal gland and then drops it off there, because you get in the regions of the blood where there's interfaces with other fluids, which the pineal gland is true because it interfaces with the cerebrospinal fluid, just like you have the urine in the kidneys, you know, and the tear ducts in the eyes. Those are all places where there's opportunity for sharing solutes between the blood and the other fluid. So in the case of the cerebrospinal fluid, that's a place where that's going on, and that's typically a more acidic environment. The pH is low, which is going to cause glyphosate to unload its metal cargo, which means it's going to release the aluminum. And so I believe glyphosate is increasing our exposure to aluminum toxicity in the brainstem, which is where the pineal gland is.
Oh, lovely.
And so both the aluminum and the glyphosate become toxic once they're separated. And then so it's basically attacking that pineal gland and messing up our sleep.
And then I've heard or I've read that the fluoride, in addition to that, has a calcifying effect on the pineal gland as well. So we're just adding insult to injury with all these chemicals that we're exposed to.
Sounds like
fluoride binds with aluminum and creates a really nasty molecule, aluminum fluoride. That molecule is really nasty because it's a phosphate analog, so it messes up everything having to do with the phosphate.
Oh, lovely. I didn't know that.
Ooh, yeah. And it sounds like no amount of morning and evening sun stimulating the retina and the melanopsin is going to fix any of this.
Yeah, you would think it would help, but I don't know. You might be, and you might even become, the sun becomes toxic when you can't defend against it. So, like, if you can't tan, a lot of people have trouble tanning. Like, they don't tan. And that's probably because they can't produce melanin, which is a skin tanning agent, which comes from that shikimate pathway as well.
Wow.
So that's pretty interesting.
I don't tan that well. Am I in trouble here?
That makes the sun more toxic, But I think the sun is a wonderful resource, and I talk about that a lot. I really feel it's wrong to douse yourself in sunscreen.
Oh, I agree.
Aluminum-containing sunscreens,
the sun's been around for how long, and then we've had sunscreens for how long, and sunscreens are supposed to prevent you from getting cancer. What a lie that is.
And that's actually increased the amount of
really
cancer.
Interesting. Well, I can remember back in the day, because I'm, up there in age.
Oh, you're not alone.
When I was a kid,
Me too.
When I was a child, they sold sunscreen, but you didn't have anything higher than SPF 8 or something. We thought 8 or 9 was like really high.
You know? They got 40s.
Now
and
you've
stuff.
got 64. Yeah, you've got
64. Oh my God,
it's ridiculous.
It is.
And the melanoma has continued to go up. So we've had I've seen a plot of the sales of sunscreen over time, going back 30 years, and the melanoma rates, and the two of them coincide. So as you sell more sunscreen, you get more melanoma. Which is so ironic because you're using the sunscreen to protect yourself from melanoma, and it's not working.
Yeah, isn't it funny how things seem to work in opposites? Whatever they tell you, it's the opposite that actually will help you.
They just never seem to make a good decision. It's incredible that they could be so wrong so many times. I don't understand it, actually.
It almost seems intentional, doesn't it?
I know. It's just like, how could they be so stupid? It's really quite remarkable.
I'm going through a personal thing with my father. His just lost his gallbladder day before yesterday, and I argued.
We don't need that anymore.
Yeah.
We've been evolved. We don't need that. They can just cut that out, and it doesn't matter one single bit. That's what people tell me, and I'm going, no.
I've tried to tell them basically, Dad, whatever they tell you, we're going to do the exact opposite of that.
Right.
But how does I bet you can correlate a direct connection with a gallbladder inflammation, a few stones. Leading to, I'm sure it blocked the bile duct, and they say, oh, well, now your pancreas is getting involved. And, they do their typical scare tactic into the surgery. But I digress. What is the correlation between the glyphosate and gallbladder? And then, any disease, basically. But there's probably a direct pathway here that you might be able to enlighten us on.
It's very simple, actually, because glyphosate disrupts the cytochrome P450 enzymes in the liver, and those enzymes are essential for making the bile acids. So glyphosate disrupts the bile flow, and when the bile doesn't flow, the gallbladder develops crystals. It's very simple.
Yeah, he's been a grain eater, liked his wheat, all these years.
Yes.
Frustrating when you try to get people to make changes, and it happens too slowly.
I know. It's very hard with your own family, isn't it?
They get upset with you.
Your own relatives.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny, Dr. Seneff, I tell people, it's so difficult being a nutritionist because you don't say what people want to hear.
Yeah.
and then the other thing is I go, well, food, everybody eats, so everybody's an expert on food, and that's because they want to rationalize the habits that they already have. But anyway, it's always been difficult to get people to make changes.
But a lot of what's been taught in the mainstream
is wrong.
Is false.
Yeah, so exactly. With the cholesterol issue, maybe we should go there.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, right. That's a good one. So I usually expect a nutritionist to demand that a person with heart disease should eat a low-fat diet. But
that's what they used to make us do. I don't do it anymore. Yes. I'd say, no, don't believe it. It is wrong. Just like the food pyramid. Oh, my God, what a nightmare that is.
Right.
I know. It's so amazing, isn't it? Well, it's fascinating to me with diabetes. My mother-in-law had diabetes many years ago, and they were encouraging her to eat low fat, which was weird because it's the carbs that are causing the sugar is a carb problem, not a fat problem. So I did not understand that.
You know what? This is the way it works. The average dietitian, unless she's thought outside of the box, is basically as bad as the average MD who never thinks outside the box.
I know.
Because they've been trained
but again, it's just so surprising that the educational system is so broken, that they're teaching you all the wrong things.
Exactly.
It's a dogma that they just, it's like a religion, we're married
it's all
to this.
about promoting the foods that are going to make money, I think.
You get attacked. You get violently attacked and called a quack when you go outside of that box.
Speaking of which, what's life been for you since you've come out with this kind of information? You come from a huge position of authority, however, that still doesn't mean you're immune from people attacking you. What's your life been like with all this information you're putting out there?
Oh, I'm certainly being attacked, but it kind of rolls off my back. I don't really care. I mean, I'm amused by it. It's just like I live in this really strange
good for you.
world.
I'm glad. I'm glad to hear that.
It's fascinating that how it works. It's frustrating though, because I am kind of blocked out of the mainstream media. It's hard for me to get my message out, because of people.
The fake news won't report it because it's truth.
Right. Yeah, I probably won't see you on Dr. Oz anytime soon, will we?
Right.
Well, that's too. So have you experienced censorship as well, or just basic attacks?
Well, I think there's censorship going on. You can't prove it, but I have a hard time getting my papers published. I can send a paper off to a mainstream journal, and they won't even send it off for a review. They just say the topic is inappropriate for the journal. And I don't know whether they think the topic's inappropriate or whether they think I'm inappropriate. I don't know, right? Whether I'm on a blacklist, I just don't know. But it is pretty much impossible.
Well, at least
I can publish, and I really like the open access journals. I love them, actually. They're willing to go out there and publish stuff that's telling it like it is and really hitting hard on some of these issues with real science, But it's frustrating that the mainstream just basically wants to hide it.
It's very frustrating.
Hide the truth.
And we can use the 21st century technology called I'll hate to say the word, but Facebook, and I'm actually doing that now for business. And I'm constantly reposting your stuff.
Same here. I always post your stuff. Sometimes I don't even get a chance to read it, and I say, oh, it's from Dr. Seneff. I'll post it. I'll read it later.
That's great. I have to maintain my reputation to make sure I don't start posting some weird stuff that nobody wants.
Yeah, you better.
I do spend that time doing that, and that's been something I've thought about. I thought of doing a few years back when I sort of realized I needed to get my message out, and I hadn't been on Facebook at all, but then I sort of realized
that's how I was too.
Me too. I fought it, but finally.
Yeah, that's what happened to me. Now I use it as an educational tool.
Yep.
I refuse to. Because social media is a way to get the message out, and they're having a hard time figuring out how to suppress that. So
that's
I think
right.
That's wonderful.
So I'm really happy that I've started using that tool, even though it's time consuming. But I don't put any kind of political or personal information up. It's strictly about health information, and as I said, I repost your stuff all the time.
So do I.
Excellent, thank you.
Because you're not just talking, you're backing everything that you're saying up with good science, and there's just how does someone argue with that? It's just difficult, and that's the kind of approach I like to take. Is they try to say, well, you're wrong. Like, well, okay, here's the facts, here's what the research is, and you disagree, fine. Like you said, you find it a bit humorous.
I just want to be very well informed on the science, such that whoever is opposing me, won't be able to come back with sufficient science to prove their side. And I hope, if I'm right and they're wrong, they're going to have a hard time.
Well done. I like it.
And I like listening to your talks too, because I listen and I listen and I listen, and then I go, okay, now I know what I say next time they say this to me.
Unfortunately,
I have educated, and I like to post my slides up on the web too, and people should be free to repurpose them however they like.
Really, that's good to know. Because unfortunately, I have a practice to run too, and I would love to just get into the research all the time, and unfortunately, that's not the case. So I appreciate the work you're doing. So that somebody.
I appreciate the fact that I've Googled your name, and you post previous presentations you've made, the PowerPoints, and all of that stuff. And
I try to just put stuff up there and hope that somebody will use it.
How would we access that? We do a Google search with your name, and then then press press the video or images, and that will pull up all your images. Is that how we do that?
Probably, yeah. My name, luckily, is fairly rare. So if you remember Seneff, which is, if you just remember that, it'll get you to a lot of stuff.
I just showed him your homepage. I have it in the back of my notes.
So you have a website too, besides the Facebook thing?
I do at MIT, and I've posted a lot of my stuff there, particularly all my papers.
Okay.
I've got all the recent papers.
He forgets. I sent him that link.
That's okay. That's my MIT web link.
Okay. And unfortunately, you already have too many friends. I sent you a friend request on Facebook.
I know. I was generous with just accepting everyone who wanted to be my friend, and then I didn't realize that there would be a limit. So.
Yeah. I just got on. I got on under the wire, so to speak.
You did. Yeah, you must have been the last one, because I think I friended you right after she did, and then it kicked me out. I went, So anyway, what else can we?
Obesity is the other thing I wanted to address, and how it correlated to 1975.
Isn't that interesting? I mean, I was really intrigued by that paper that I found, which was trying to blame obesity on sugar. But the match was not that great with the sugar in their plot. But there was so we were getting slowly fatter after about 1950. We were skinny before 1950, and then we sort of started getting slowly fatter. In 1975, the slope hit the corner, and now we start getting fatter faster. Starting in 1975. And I totally think glyphosate is the reason why we're obese. And you see all around the world, when a country starts to adopt a Western diet, they start getting
fat. Yeah.
It's all around the world. It's obesity, diabetes. I mean, I think they're totally connected. And what's interesting is, so for example, lipase, which is an enzyme that breaks down fat, is another one of those proteins that has glycine dependencies. So if you've got glycine substituted for glyphosate, and the lipase doesn't work. And there's a hormone-sensitive lipase in the fat cells, and it responds to hormones. So when you release hormones that tell the fat cell, release your fat because we want to have it for energy, for moving or something, for the muscles, the fat cell can't let the fat out in response to the hormone if it's got glyphosate substituting in the lipase. So I think that's really crucial. The fat gets into the fat cell and then it can't get out. It's just like I didn't quite finish the story with the fibrosis, but what happens with I did sort of. I said the fibrosis with the collagen getting messed up with the glyphosate is hard to break down. But the enzyme that actually breaks down the collagen also has glycine dependencies. So if its glycine gets substituted by glyphosate, it doesn't work.
Wow.
So you've got a double hit there. You've got the collagen is hard to break down, and then the enzyme that breaks it down is broken. So then you get fibrosis, and we've got a lot of issues with fibrosis of various tissues. Liver fibrosis, which goes to cirrhosis, and then liver cancer, and like COPD with the lung fibrosis, and kidney fibrosis with the kidney failure. I mean, all this stuff. And there's even a kind of a fibrosis involved with the brain, the fascia of the brain that can cause things like headache. So it's just like so amazing.
That's this is hitting home because they were supposed to take my father's gallbladder laparoscopically, and when they got in there, they said there was too much scar tissue around that area, so they had to open him up. And they know what they blamed it on? An appendix, and it wasn't even appendicitis, but they took his appendix, some close to 50 years ago, probably. They blamed all that scar tissue on that procedure, which the appendix is on the lower right quadrant, the gallbladder is in the upper right quadrant, and it doesn't sound like it was that. I think you just explained it to me.
I bet you it's right. That's very interesting, because I haven't even looked at fibrosis in the gallbladder, but I bet you that's exactly the same thing. It's so interesting. It's just that the collagen becomes resistant to being broken down. Enzyme that breaks it down becomes broken.
What a mess our whole physiological system has gotten into with this glyphosate. It's just amazing.
It's quite a nightmare.
Here's an idea, Stephanie. Design another molecule that turns glyphosate into glycine.
I know. You need something that can break that bond. There's a CP bond, which is really difficult to break. I think that's really part of glyphosate's trouble, is that it has this really, only a few microbes know how to break that bond.
Wow. And they're killing all our good microbes in the gut with this glyphosate, too. They're killing it in the soil. It's really devastating what's going on.
Specifically, which microbes are those? Do you have those on the top of your head?
Yeah, well, lactobacillus is interesting because those are the ones, of course, that drink the milk, in a sense, right? They're the ones that grow immediately when the baby's born. The lactobacillus needs to flourish, and then we'll keep out the pathogens. And lactobacillus depends critically on manganese. It's actually an interesting microbe that doesn't use iron at all, but has a critical dependency on manganese. And glyphosate is a very strong chelator of manganese, making it unavailable. So this is going to really hurt the lactobacillus.
Well, that's interesting, because that's a mineral that they never talked about much, even in all my schooling. So
I noticed that, too. It's very interesting that manganese is a sleeper, People don't talk about it. Just like sulfate. I mean, I think sulfate is so crucial.
Yeah, we got to talk about both of them. Tell us about sulfate.
They're both really important. And the manganese, one of Anthony and I have written 6 papers together, and one of them was about manganese.
I'll have to read that.
Yeah, and it's really interesting what we found. I mean, it's fun. The science is fun. You go deep into some topic, and you just find so many surprises. Because manganese is a crucial catalyst for certain proteins, enzymes that are whose defect is related to autism. So it really lined up very well with the autism, the manganese deficiency, and autistic. They've done studies on manganese with autistic kids and found deficiencies in the hair, in the baby teeth, and in the urine. They found low manganese. So I really think manganese is an issue with the autistic kids. Manganese is a catalyst for chondroitin sulfate.
Oh my gosh!
Really, yeah, that one's really crucial.
Wow.
In the bones and in the in the joints, chondroitin sulfate is very important.
Wow,
And manganese also is a catalyst for an antioxidant enzyme called manganese superoxide dismutase, which soaks up superoxide and keeps you safe from it. So when that guy isn't working, you're going to get superoxide damage. And manganese also converts glutamate to glutamine. Glutamate is a neurotoxin, and so you get excess glutamate. And autistic kids have very high glutamate and very low glutamine in their blood, which I think is due to manganese deficiency. So there's a lot of stuff that fits.
Oh, the glutamate. That one's the glutamate toxicity is related to a manganese deficiency. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, because manganese is needed to convert glutamate to glutamine, and that's how the brain actually manages glutamate. Glutamate is a neurotoxin. It's a neurotransmitter, but it can become toxic if it's too much. And normally the astrocytes grab the glutamate out of the synapse as soon as it's released. So the neuron sends a signal to the next neuron with the glutamate, and then the astrocyte is like cleaning things up, and it pulls that glutamate out and converts it to glutamine, and sends it back to the neuron through the back door as glutamine, because glutamine is not neuroexcitatory. But that process breaks down if you don't have manganese. It's really interesting.
We are really mineral deficient too with the chelation of all the minerals with the glyphosate, and that's something that, again, it's one of those things that's kind of difficult for people to understand or to grasp because it's not direct nuts and bolts, so to speak.
It's really interesting, and it's not just a matter of chelating the minerals either, because glyphosate messes up the natural chelators of the minerals. It's messing up the whole transmission of the minerals, the uptake of the minerals. A lot of the transporters have critical dependencies on glycine. So we've been rummaging through the research literature, finding glycine dependencies in various enzymes or different proteins, and then seeing if we can link them to various diseases that are going up dramatically in step with glyphosate. And it's just it just lines up so beautifully. The puzzle pieces just fall right into place, which is why I think this is what's happening.
Oh, I know. We didn't finish up on the sulfate and cholesterol.
Right, cholesterol sulfate. That's a beautiful molecule that you don't hear much about.
Yeah.
And that is really very little researched, which really surprises me. Lots and lots of it is made in the skin, cholesterol sulfate, and sunlight is a catalyst for the synthesis of it. It's right alongside vitamin D sulfate, But cholesterol sulfate, I think, is a more important molecule than vitamin D sulfate. I think it's a key. First of all, it protects the red blood cells and the platelets and the LDL particles from damage. The cholesterol sulfate in the membrane forms like a shield around them. And cholesterol sulfate is a very easy way to deliver both cholesterol and sulfate. So it's a really great solution for transporting those two molecules, which are really important to the cells, but very difficult to transport.
And
both the cholesterol and the sulfate have that problem.
And how do we get more of that?
More cholesterol sulfate? Well, certainly eating sulfur-containing foods, eating cholesterol is a great way to get cholesterol because it's a hard molecule to make. So you should eat foods that are rich in cholesterol.
So people are having a real hard time with that because so many people have told them, don't eat cholesterol.
I know.
It's going to give you heart disease and blah, 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 blah. And,
it's a shame that they're keeping people away from eggs and seafood. I mean, those foods are so healthy. Oysters are one of the healthiest foods you can eat.
I had such a hard time trying to tell people years ago in the day that, not to eat eggs because it's not only they're one of the best sources of protein around. I mean, the amino acid profile is awesome, and all the vitamins and nutrients
choline,
in the yolk.
Vitamins and interesting, and of course cholesterol and saturated fat, which are both very healthy, which people don't realize. Saturated fat, of course, is another one that has been attacked, and it's actually one of the best fats because it cannot be oxidized. That's a really super feature of saturated fat. You know, the unsaturated fats are susceptible to oxidation damage, and then they can cause a cascade of damage to the cell once they become oxidized.
Yeah, and then the plastic margarine that they've taught us that we should be eating.
I know. I never succumbed to the switch from butter to margarine. I always ate butter.
I know.
Me too.
Same here. I just hate. I tried it. I have to admit that. I tell people when I see them eating those things that why don't you just use butter, organic butter?
Yeah.
It's exceedingly hard to find
butter
good.
Is a great food. It's a great food, and in fact, we use lard in organic lard.
I agree. That's high in DHA.
Yeah, I know. It's a terrific oil. Whereas they keep promoting all these ridiculous vegetable oils that come from the GMO, crops, like soybean oil and the canola oil. Those things are horrible, and they pretend they're healthy, and they get people to buy them. Really
the thing that they never taught us in school in nutrition was how much the manufacturing process interferes with the nutritional value of the foods.
Yeah.
Just like
absolutely.
Some of the vitamin supplements out there are actually grown on GMO bacteria and things of that nature.
I've been reading about that. That's so scary because I'm suspecting glyphosate, because they probably aren't using organic
surely
nutrients to feed those bacteria, right?
Yeah. Oh, and that was another, you just reminded me, I was really surprised to hear that B12 is interfered with because cobalt, I can never say that.
Cobalt and manganese are the most affected by glyphosate out of all the minerals. According to a cow study, the cows, they looked at all the minerals in the blood, and they found incredibly low levels of cobalt and manganese. Of course, cobalt is crucial for cobalamin.
We're writing notes.
Yeah.
That's why it went quiet. We're both writing notes.
I'm just going, oh my God, I got to look into this too.
So let me ask you something on a personal note. You've got so much information in your head. Do you have a photographic memory?
I wonder. I have an odd memory because I am very bad at remembering events in my personal life. It's so funny because we were my family took a vacation, like say 20 years ago in California, and we stayed at some hotel in San Diego, and Victor, my husband, will remember the name of the hotel that we stayed at, and I won't even remember that we took the trip.
I bet he loves that.
Yeah, I have a selective memory. I'm very bad at remembering people's names.
Oh, so am I.
And faces. So I think my memory is very weird. But I'm very good at remembering about the names of biological, molecules and things like that. So it's sort of a very strange memory that I have.
Okay, well then I can still like you because anybody with a photographic memory, we're
jealous of.
I just tell them I hate people like you because I have to
just not fair.
That's right. I know people with photographic memories, and it just isn't right. It's not fair.
But I think the other thing I might be good at is sort of connecting the dots because I really enjoy a puzzle, and I consider biology a humongous puzzle.
It is.
And what I see is
picturing.
Yeah, a huge advantage you have is this background in the AI and your ability to comb through so much information by using your technology you connect so many dots using that you don't have to spend a lifetime reading everything. You just read what's important.
Right. It's helpful to be able to have the computer help me out with that.
That's
awesome.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I'll just have to keep struggling through my way. So back to the obesity thing in 1975. We didn't really connect those dots on that. The details of the glyphosate and the.
Isn't that when it was introduced? Roundup was introduced. Is 1975?
That was when Roundup was introduced, and that's when we started getting that. And I feel like every country as they adopt the Western diet, they start getting fat. It's just like clockwork, all around the world. And as I mentioned, the lipase, which is this, which metabolizes fats, gets messed up, I think, because of the glyphosate substitution for glycine in that molecule that prevents it from being able to metabolize the fats, which ends up causing the fats to pile up. And I also think that the accumulation of abdominal fat is a protective strategy.
You know what? That's funny that you said that, because that was something that I said years ago, that I thought that because of all the chemicals that we're exposed to, it's the body's way of protecting itself with a dilutional effect. I mean, if you're storing some of these chemicals in the fat cells, then the more fat cells you have, the less toxic it becomes to the body. I just didn't know that glyphosate was the one that was behind a lot of this.
Are you talking subcutaneous, visceral, or both? The fat.
Visceral, I think, actually, probably mostly. And it's sort of right-handy to the gut, right? So you can just kind of push off those toxic chemicals into those fat cells. And this is, basically the fat-soluble toxic chemicals, which glyphosate is more water-soluble than fat-soluble, but glyphosate disrupts those cytochrome P450 enzymes in the liver, which prevents the liver from metabolizing a lot of those poisons that are fat-soluble. So then they become a problem unless you can stuff them away in fat cells. Then they're going to attack your brain or something,
Right. At least in the fat cells, we're insulating them from the body. But
the fat cells are just hanging on to those things just to keep the rest of your cells from being exposed. And the nice thing about the fat cells is they don't have to do anything terribly clever. They're not their liver. They could just sit there and store those toxic chemicals until the cows come home. But as soon as you start dieting,
then you release those chemicals, and then you can have a sickness effect, sort of.
Exactly.
So we talked about the bone broth and the vinegar being good to help neutralize this. But let's say someone is dieting, and they are releasing the toxins back into the body. Is there something you found that actually helps to remove it intact rather than changing the molecular structure through these probiotics and so forth?
Well, that's what the fulvic acid and humic acid allegedly do. They bind to the glyphosate and then they carry it out through the feces.
Oh.
I definitely have to get some more Fulvimax, it's called, from Epigenetic Labs.
That sounds like a good product.
It is.
And
that's the only one that I've seen that has that in it. I don't know, maybe some of the other companies do, but that's the only one that I saw that had it. And
what I find very hard to imagine is how you get the glyphosate out of the bone marrow. I think that's very difficult.
Yeah, well, that's...
Really? That's why I think it's so critical that we get this substance banned nationwide.
Absolutely. I mean, it's already too late, probably. I mean, to keep us from having an absolute catastrophe in the next 10 years. I think it's already too late. I hope I'm wrong, but that's what I suspect.
It certainly is looking that way.
The autism rates are going to keep on going up, and the schools are going to be completely overwhelmed with all the sick kids. We have over half the kids already have
learning disabilities,
some kind of problem, with autoimmune disease or asthma, eczema. Eczema is a total epidemic, and
food allergies too have increased.
Oh, the food allergies are through the roof, which it's interesting to me how the health of our children has been eroding for quite some time now. And when I think back on my childhood, in my grade school, I can only think of one child who had any kind of problem, which was asthma. There was one child in my school, not even in my class, who had asthma. And I don't remember anybody having any food allergies. There was, of course, no ADHD, no autism, none of it, People were healthy.
Yeah.
And now it's just like normal. Everybody expects their kid to have something.
Every kid has some kind of chronic autoimmune disease of some sort, it seems.
It's just amazing to me that how the humans are such that they can let this kind of thing happen over a period of time and not somehow acknowledge it, They just go about their business as if everything's fine. I don't understand that, actually.
I think it's something to do with our...
mass media?
Well, it's something we're coded to live more in the moment for instant survival and reproduction. We're not looking too far into the future from strictly a biological reproduction standpoint. We just want to be able to mate up, reproduce, and burn out and die off. That's kind of the way of nature. So
we really just kind of become accepting of these things. Like it seems like we expect that old people are going to be hobbling around. They're going to have, dementia. I mean, we just expect people to be really frail and mentally declining and all of that as they age. We just think that's normal, Well, now we think that's normal.
Yeah, it's funny, though. If you say something like, oh, my, this, that, or something, hurts or whatever, and they look at you, they can tell you're older. They go, well, that's just age, that just comes with age, and I'm going, baloney.
Right,
it doesn't.
Exactly. It's just like they just accept it, They just think it's normal. It frustrates me because I know when I was a child, we had lots of old people around who were fine. They were able to walk just fine. They weren't like barely walking in agony and barely able to take a step. I mean, we see so many old people like that now.
Yeah.
It's frightening.
You should have seen the looks on some of these people's faces when they come and ask my father questions. So he's almost 85. September would be 85. Oh, you live alone? Oh, you're active? Oh, you drive? Yeah. It's like, he's got a couple acres to take care of. He rides the tractor. He goes out and does woodwork. He needs to go back home.
It's great.
Yeah. I know you get past 50, even 60, you're going, they expect you to practically be in a wheelchair, Yeah. It's really sad.
Right, and of course the statin drugs, I think the statin drugs, you could characterize their side effects
That's poison.
with one word, which is one phrase, which is making you age faster.
Yeah.
And you look at all the side effects of statins, and they're all related to aging.
Now, how does that...
Going bald, and hearing loss, and arthritis, and diabetes. All these side effects of statins. And it's just amazing to me that we say, oh, yes, statins are such a wonder drug. You've got to take a statin if you've got heart disease. It's going to rescue you from a heart attack. And meanwhile, it's just completely, really hurting your quality of life when you've got all these aches and pains and your muscles are so weak you can't open a jar. It's amazing to me that people are fine with that. Well, so
and
good
then
that I'm not going to get a heart attack.
The audacity.
And that's not even true because it's only a very slight decrease in your risk of a heart attack.
There really isn't any.
I know, and then you have the doctors prescribing it when they should know full well what it's doing.
No, they're indoctrinated.
They're
indoctrinated into a dogmatic system that they don't look deep enough.
Just like vaccines are safe and effective, and effective.
If you even looked at where that research came from, it's problematic. It's it was lazy intellectual practice. It was bad. Research. They stopped the research early because they started seeing a direction that was going that was counterproductive for their sales. So they even used a group of people that didn't even, quote, need it, that supposedly showed some benefit from it, and that's the group they used to sell the whole idea. And we're still stuck in that lipid panel dogma. It just, I'm getting going here.
Now, well, you're saying it very well, and I totally agree.
So tie the glyphosate in with heart disease, and also glyphosate in combination with the
Lipitor,
the Lipitors, and I just got tongue-tied there. See, I'm still starstruck because of who's on the phone here with us.
We love you, Stephanie.
So what's the combination do?
Well, interesting with the glyphosate actually, because we looked at some data on the hospital discharge data that the U.S. government maintains, and we found that despite all the statin drugs, the number of people being labeled with having high serum LDL was going up over time, in step with the increase in the use of glyphosate. Pretty good match, actually, with use of glyphosate. So glyphosate, I think, is causing an increase in serum LDL, and I think it's doing that in particular because it's messing up fructose processing. Fructose is very interesting, in high fructose corn syrup, for example. Fructose in high fructose corn syrup, which is also probably contaminated with glyphosate.
Definitely.
And glyphosate messes up the gut microbes management of fructose. So what I think is happening is that the fructose is going through the gut without getting turned into something else by the gut microbes, because those enzymes that do that are broken. So you end up with hitting the liver hard with fructose. The liver gets way too much fructose. Fructose is extremely glycating. It's 10 times as bad as glucose as a glycating agent. That's the diabetes effect. So the liver tries to sweep the fructose out of the blood before it gets into the general circulation. That's sort of its job, to get things out that are going to be dangerous. And the liver gets stuck with all this fructose that it can't manage, so it has to convert the fructose into fat. And then it either has to store the fat locally to make fatty liver disease, which is also an epidemic, or it has to release that fat that it made from the fructose as LDL particles.
Low densities.
And then on top of that, the cholesterol's not working, the cholesterol sulfate, so it can't send the cholesterol out through the bile acid. So he's got this kind of problem that has to make all these LDL particles to release the fat and the cholesterol that is accumulating, and so you end up with high serum LDL.
Right, and those are the small LDLs, not the nice, large, fluffy ones, right?
Right, and there's different sizes of LDL. It's really funny with the HDL because they came up with this great drug that could cause your HDL levels to go through the roof. I don't know if you remember that, if you knew about that. They never marketed it.
I heard something to that effect. I don't know what happened to it. It kind of came and went, didn't it?
They could never market it. It would make your HDL numbers look absolutely wonderful. Of course, HDL is the good guy, right? They
supposedly,
yeah.
Yeah, that's what
but
they
basically, what this was called CETP, CETP inhibitors, and CETP is a cholesterol ester transfer protein, which exchanges goods between HDL particles and LDL particles. And when you break that, you basically break the HDL's ability to do its job. And so what happens is the HDL basically turns into a bad guy, So it produces all these large numbers of HDL particles, which are bad HDL instead of good HDL. So it's just like these drugs just mess everything up, And
they do.
They talk indiscriminately about LDL, but you've got those small, dense LDL particles, which are the ones that have they've delivered their goods and they're ready to be recycled, but the liver won't take them back because they're toxic and they've been exposed by sugars and by oxidation damage. The macrophages are stuck with cleaning them up because the liver won't take them back. They're just damaged goods, and so
a lot of serum inflammation, huh?
Yeah, I mean that's what they're going to cause inflammation, but that's because they don't have enough sulfate to protect them from the exposure to the oxygen and sugar.
So eat more onions and garlic.
I know garlic is great. I
love garlic.
Yeah,
we eat tons of garlic. We always put lots of garlic on our salad along with our vinegars.
Well, I love onions too, but trouble is I have to breathe around people.
Yeah, that's the only drawback. You have this tendency to have an odor about you.
Yeah.
Yes, onions and garlic are fantastic, really healthy food.
So you are a Hawaii fan. Which island are you a fan of?
We have a home on Kauai.
I told you
whereabouts?
did.
Yeah, I thought it was Kauai. My fiance's parents live in Kapa'a, and where's your place?
Or would you rather? North Shore, Princeville.
What's that?
Yeah.
Oh, Princeville? Yeah.
Princeville. Yes, it's not too far from Kapa'a.
Right. Yeah, it's about a.
Oh, I'm jealous of both of you guys.
There's an inside joke with the family. Is that she was stuck up there one time and told her parents to come get her, and she said, "Well, it's only a 10-minute drive. It's more like 30 by the time you get through all the traffic and everything."
Yes.
But anyway, what's the status? I know they've the consciousness is. I've been going there for years. Had gotten much more active there. I used to see signs everywhere. No Monsanto, no Glyphosate, all this. Now I haven't been seeing that. You're probably a little more in touch because you have a place there and probably go there more often. What's the status there of Monsanto and Glyphosate?
It's been very difficult. I think there's so much power with chemical industry there. I mean, it's a real battle there. It's really ground zero because you've got these wonderful organic farmers on the North Shore, and I think they're getting worn out and tired of it all because politically there's just so much money that's going to promote voting for the wrong people. So it's just like so difficult. And they passed this wonderful bill, and we were part of it, and we were involved in that process of passing Bill 2491 a few years back, which was really pretty modest. It was just requiring that the industry would let you know. They would have to publicly announce what they're spraying, where they're spraying it, when they're spraying it, so that people can get out of the way. Because you had people in homes right next door to fields which were being sprayed with toxic, chemicals. They're developing new GMOs, for example, new products that will be resistant to glyphosate. So they use lots and lots of glyphosate, but they would not let the legislators know how much they were using. Then they just keep it secret. So kids would get sick in the school, and they would see they were spraying something, and you wouldn't know what they were spraying, and you couldn't find out. So the kids would go to the hospital and get treated, but you didn't know what they were being poisoned with. It was really unbelievable. And they passed this law, and then it got immediately into litigation, and the industry just throws money at the problem and does all these lawsuits and just disrupts everything, so that even though the law is passed, it doesn't work,
Right.
It doesn't happen. It's
Darn.
so frustrating. I think people just get tired. So I think the people who believe in the organic are kind of just making their own little world. That's they're just kind of checking it out from the main system, just saying, to hell with you guys, I don't care, you guys can do what you want, but we're going to live our lives the way we want to in this oasis that's,
Yeah, I love the farmers markets.
Yes, the farmers markets are wonderful. We go multiple ones at different days, different places.
Yeah, isn't that great? There's like every day you can find a farmers market somewhere in Kauai.
Yes, right, they're really great.
But I was kind of under the impression that things had gotten better in that respect. Well, agriculture is gone. They've, so they're not spraying the cane fields and all that there. But it seems like
but they have that. But they have these new. They use huge amounts of chemicals on these in developing the new GMOs, because they have to expose them and kill them, and then find out which ones live, and then grow them again and expose them some more. So they're using really high levels of chemicals when they're developing new seeds that are going to be GMO resistant or something. It's really.
It is so frustrating. All these chemicals, it just makes me sick.
It's really frustrating that they're producing the new crops that are going to be resistant. New ideas for resistance, which is going to be more and more, toxic chemicals in our food. So it's very sad.
And they take every food that's really good for you and they GMO it. And ruin it.
Yeah, well, I can't have you eating something that's going to keep your health going. We need to kill you guys off.
Oh, my God, that's so frustrating. I guess there was one other area that I wanted to mention real quick, and that was that you had mentioned something about we have a new epidemic of anemia and how that relates to the glyphosate as well. It's interfering with the... How does that work?
It interferes with heme synthesis. That's been shown. It messes up the synthesis of something called a pyrrole ring, which is a component of heme, and heme is in hemoglobin, which is in the red blood cells. And, of course, I mentioned that it goes into the bone marrow. Glyphosate, Monsanto's own study showed the highest levels in the bone marrow, which I found really disturbing. Because that's where the new stem cells come from, and that's where the new red blood cells come from. So the red blood cells are getting exposed to glyphosate from the beginning of their life in that bone marrow. And then it's going to mess up the red blood cell in many ways. It's going to disrupt the supply of sulfate to the red blood cell, which protects it from falling apart. So the red blood cells have a shortened lifespan if they don't have enough sulfate in their membrane. They put cholesterol sulfate in their membranes to keep them safe from what's called hemolysis, which is to break the red blood cells.
Wow.
So, and of course the iron is an issue too, because of the chelation of iron by the glyphosate. Glyphosate messes up a lot of things.
It messes with zinc too, doesn't it?
It does, yes.
Wow. Iron, zinc,
just
manganese, probably magnesium too,
all
of it.
All those metals that are nutrients, the catalysts, all those metals are messed up by glyphosate. So we've got such a huge problem with not just mineral deficiency, but also mineral toxicity, because it causes them to be toxic because it messes up the transport mechanism. So iron becomes both toxic and deficient at the same time.
Wow.
Oh.
Well, this is rather disturbing, I must say. It's a real challenge to eat healthy nowadays.
Yes, it is.
I know, that's right.
So, well, it looks like it's getting to be our time to have to wrap it up here. I could talk to you for hours.
Yeah. Oh, well, I'll probably be on the island in September. When are you going back next?
We won't be back until probably November or December.
Oh, too bad.
I'm jealous of both of you guys. I don't get to go there. But anyway.
I was going to say, too bad. We should get together and do dinner or something. But
that would be fun, yes. Well, it was great talking to you guys.
You too.
See if I could make a special trip. No.
Yeah.
It was great talking to you, Stephanie. I thank you so much for being on the show, and maybe I can have you back again sometime.
Hopefully we can do this again. This is great.
That'd be great.
I love what you're doing. Keep doing what you're doing, and there are people out there that are backing you up 100%, and Dr. Glenn and I are both in that category.
Yeah, even though it says it's frustrating, seems like an uphill, upstream swim, there are some people that are listening, and
I know that gives me such. I am so happy that there are people who are willing to listen and believe what I'm saying. So I just have to keep on getting them to spread the message, which you guys are doing, and that's wonderful. So thank you so much.
So let me say I don't believe in what you're saying, because to believe is to accept on faith without proof. You provide plenty of proof.
Yeah.
So
your documentation is awesome.
It's a knowledge, not a belief.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I certainly believe in knowledge. I think that's the answer. You've got to and if you don't believe it, go read the literature yourself, and you'll see.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's what I like about your work, is you're so brilliant in that, and connecting all the dots. And as you said, if anybody comes to challenge you, good luck with that.
Yeah. Good luck with that. You better be well versed in what you're talking about, because you're going to lose.
Yeah, knowledge is a good weapon, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, thank you again so much, and
Thank you.
it was wonderful having you on my show, and I hope to have you again sometime. And again,
Thank you so much for having me.
keep up the good work.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
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 You're listening to 98.1 FM, KPFB LP, Pahrumps Freedom Radio.